Hey guys, okay, so here's the homework for the week. So week 5, day 1, list the common factors of 15 and 10. Common factors for 15 are 1, 3, 5, and 15. For 10 is 1, 2, 5, 10. Common factors are 1 and 5. For compare, using greater than, less than, or equal to, I like to stack my numbers. So 52 and 8/100ths compared to 52 and 8/10ths. And as you can see, 8 is larger than 0 in that place. So 52 and 8/100ths is less. 87/100ths is greater. 45 and 25/100ths is greater than. 17/100ths is less than. 18 and 3/10ths is greater than. For number 3, solve using order of operations showing each step. So as you can see, you have to solve your groupings first. Next, you multiply, then you can add. That gives you 102. For this one, you have to solve your grouping first, and then solve addition and subtraction from left to right. So 84 and 36 is 120, and then subtract 3, and that gives me 117. For number 4, I have unnecessary information. This 227 doesn't even matter. It's just a troop number. But I have 493 boxes of cookies, and I need to fit them into a large box, but 16 boxes fit in a large box. So how many boxes will I need? So I did area model. I made a box that represents 493 of the smaller boxes. And then I have 16 because 16 can fit. So I'm thinking 16 times 3 gives me 48, but I annex a 0 so that I can take a bigger chunk. So I take 480 from 493, and I'm left with 13. Now, I cannot get another group of 16, so that's a 0 over here, but I have 13 smaller boxes that need to fit in a box. So what do I need to do? I need one more box to help fit those 13 cookies. So instead of 30 boxes, I need 31 boxes. Okay, let's look at day 2. So using mental math, I round 782 to 800 and 42 to 40, and that gave me 32,000. And I thought 4 times 8 is 32, and then I had 3 zeros, so I annexed them. The algorithm, I took 782 times 2, that gave me 1,564. And then I did times 40 because my 2 was gone. So I brought my 0 down and treated it like a 4. That gave me 31,280. Added my partial products, and that gave me 32,844. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Using number 99 and 999 thousandths to answer the question, how many times greater is the 9 in the 10th place than the 9 in, in the 10's place than the 10th place. So the 10's place is all the way over here, and I had to move 2 times. So 10 times 10, each place is 10 times greater. 10 times 10 is 100, so this is 100 times greater. For the next one, the 9 in the thousandths compared to the 9 in the 10ths. So here's the thousandths, and to move over to the 10ths, I would have to jump 2 times back, right? So that shows me that that number is 100 times less because I moved 2 times. All right, looking at my number line, I have 37 and 38. So 37 and a half is about halfway through my number line. So where is 37 and 67/100ths? Well, I'm thinking this is 37 and 6/10ths, 7/10ths, 8/10ths, 9/10ths, and 10/10ths, of course, is my next whole number. So this shows me that 36 and 67/100ths would be somewhere between 37 and 6/10ths and 37 and 7/10ths. And that just shows me that it would round to 38 and not 37 because it's much closer to 38 as a whole number. All right, let's look over at the back. So I did box method for my first problem, and I did my 8, 2, 1, and 1, and then I just subtracted and slid over, and that gave me 357. For my next one, I did partial quotient, and again, I got 300 on my first line, 50 on my next, and then 7 on my last line. I added it up, and that gave me 357 as my whole number. Round to the nearest tenths. So this is the 10th place, and I look to the right, and that's a 5. So that tells me to push that place up so it becomes a 1. Everything behind it turns to 0, so I don't need to even write the number behind the decimal. and the numbers in the front stay the same. So that gives me 6,714 and 1/10. So when I'm looking at my whole number now, I'm looking at the 4 and there's a 0 there. So 0 tells me that this number 4 stays the same. Everything in the front stays the same as well. Tens place, I have a 1 in the tens place. Looking to the right, I have a 4. So that the 1 is going to stay the same. All right, hundreds place, I have a 7 and a 1 next to that. So my 7 is going to stay the same. And everything behind it turns to 0. Thousands place, I have a 7 next to the 6. So that's going to push that 6 up to a 7. And that's going to change to 7,000. All right, using order of operations, show all my steps. So first thing I'm going to do is solve both of my groupings. So I have 3 times 5, which is 15. Bring my time sign down. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now I'm going to bring everything else down. And I still have a multiplication, so that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve. So over to the side, I'm going to do 15 times 4. And then that's 20, 4, 5, 6. So that gives me 60. So I have 60 here, and then I subtract by 83. So now I'm going to do this over to the side as well. And that gives me 3 and 20. So my answer is 23. Thank you. Okay. All right, so now I'm looking over at my place value chart, and I just put my numbers in because it told me least to greatest, and I knew I had 2 numbers that were 4s and 3 numbers that were 5. So I'm just going to keep going. So I'm looking at my next place, and the 5 compared to a 9, 5 is smaller, so I'm going to write that number in. Oops, that's a 0. Sorry about that. All right, and then my next number is 4 and 95 hundredths. So I'll write that one and cross that one off. Now I've got some 5s, and I'm going to look in the tenths place, and I notice that this 4 is the smaller number. So I can cross that out. Now I have 2 that have a 9, but I'll look over to the right, and there's a 0. So 904 is next, and then 94 is last, okay? So there's just another shot so you can see which numbers need to be placed where. All right, estimated sum. This is telling me to round to the nearest 10. So if I have 67 hundredths, that rounds to 0. This rounds to 70, and this rounds to 60. So what am I really adding? I'm adding 60 plus 70 plus 0. And I don't really need to put my 0 there, of course. So that gives me 130. Okay, now when I do the exact sum, I need to line up my decimals. So 67 and 3/10, 63 and 7/10, and then 67 hundredths. And I always annex zeros when I'm behind a decimal so that I don't make any mistakes when I get to subtracting, because annexing that 0 when I subtract is super important in order for me to get it right. Okay, so that's 13, 14, 15, 16, carry 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 12 plus 1 more is 13. So that gave me 131 and 67 hundredths, and that's pretty close to my estimate. Okay, all right, looking at this problem, Kiana subtracted 341 and 25 hundredths minus 198 and got a difference of 339. Well, you know that can't be correct because that's not even close to what 198 from that would be. So what did she probably do? She probably didn't line up her decimals. So I lined everything up the way that it's supposed to. I annexed zeros, 2 zeros, and I put my decimal there, and then I lined the number up correctly, and that gave me 143 and 25 hundredths. All right, next one. Remember back on that problem, we had a 493 boxes. Now we need 72 fewer. So all I'm going to do is just take 493 minus 72. Mikey buys 2 shirts at $8. Sorry if the camera's a little shaky, guys. I'm having to use my phone again. So sorry about that. So 2 times 8, he also buys a pair of jeans for $20. So I'm going to add 20. And guys, this needs to be in an expression just like this. Okay, and then he gets a discount for $3 on his entire purchase. So I'm going to put this whole thing in parentheses and then subtract $3. Okay, write an expression using order of operations and then solve it. Okay, so inside of my grouping, the first thing I need to do is multiply. And that gives me 16 plus 2 minus 3. Okay, and then next would be 18 minus 3. And then I would subtract that, and that gives me 15. So total, he paid $15. All right, have a good evening, guys.